The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Hey, a movie! Yeah, we're gonna be a movie!
Starring everybody
And me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Hey, a movie! We can watch it all develop. Starring everybody!
And me. We'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in! We're gonna start right here!
And we are going to start right here. Happy Black History Month, everyone. It's actually the end of Black History Month. Actually, it's March 2nd, but who's counting? I threw in an extra 2 days for reparations.
Yeah.
Reparations. I'm an ally. I am ridiculous, but I'm also Mark Radulich, your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified. And this is Triple Feature, and we are closing up our 3 podcast series celebrating Black cinema in this Black History Month of the year of our Lord 2023. And as he has for the previous 2 shows and the ones we did last year as well, finishing up with me, someone who thinks he shows himself way too much on these podcasts and is afraid to just assert himself for no good reason. You're like, oh, I've been on too many podcasts. I don't want to. Oh my God, ladies and gentlemen, Jangle Leg the Woman, Jason Teasley.
Oh, don't even start. Well, I mean, I'm just trying to get, I don't want to be oversaturated because, when I do appear, I want it to be a
Dude, this whole fucking network's named after me. What do you mean oversaturated?
Well, I was just saying, I want to be, I'm like the Andre the Giant. I want to be the special attraction. I want to be.
You're special, all right.
Oh, yeah. Don't even get me started.
You're less Andre the Giant and more George the Animal Steel. I want you to know that.
Hey,
I've seen some of your arguments in our group chat.
Hey, we will bring that up in a future podcast, and we will let the masses decide on. That could be on trial.
Are you gonna? I'm not doing an on trial for Peter fucking Pan, you psycho.
Why on trial, Peter Pan?
But so I worked it out privately though. Robert we're gonna end up doing a review of Peter Pan and Wendy, which is what started that whole stupid argument in the first place. And he was like, "We're gonna do like an impromptu. Everyone loves a bad guy, Peter Pan, on that show." Should I write your name down? You want to be part of that one too? Psycho.
Well, I mean, if I could present my argument of how I feel about Peter Pan, sure.
I want to do like a pardon the interruption with you. Like you're not on the whole show. You could like do like a Rush Limbaugh run in where you're just like Peter Pan's a child trafficker and like run off again.
Yeah. See, you already spoiled my take on it.
Robert Winfrey's gonna lay out this very like To Kill a Mockingbird esque not Kill a Mockingbird the Matthew McConaughey law movie. Like A Few Good Men. I know that's not the movie, but
Lincoln Lawyer.
He's gonna lay out this like whole like really like legitimate legal case for why Peter Pan is the villain and not Captain Hook, and then you're just gonna run in and go, Peter Pan's a child trafficker, whee! And like run away. That's you. That's what I want. That's what I need you for. But you have to be shirtless.
Hey, this could be the new. Do you want to build a snowman?
Peter Pan's fucking child trafficker.
Yeah, me just pop up on shows.
Roll off the tongue. It's not sing songy.
Hey, I could make it sing songy, just be backstage on shows, and you just bring me on, and I'm just shirtless saying Peter Pan's a child trafficker, and then I leave.
You're like Ollie, the weatherman from Family Guy.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, so now that we've lost our audience, we are discussing the great comedian Eddie Murphy on tonight's show. We're cleaning up Black History Month with a look at 3 classic Eddie Murphy movies. Eddie Murphy was born April 3rd, 1961. As we all know, I mean, he's quite famous. He's an American actor, comedian, and singer. He rose to fame on the sketch comedy show Saturday Night Live, for which he was a regular cast member from 1980 to 1984. Most infamously, his most famous character was Buckwheat. Murphy, the adult Buckwheat, by the way, all grown up Buckwheat. Murphy has also worked as a stand-up comedian and is ranked number 10 on Comedy Central's list of 100 greatest stand-ups of all time. He's received Grammy Awards and Emmy Awards and was honored with the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor in 2015 and the Golden Globe Cecil B. DeMille Award in 2023. He's also received, there's a whole wiki dedicated to this. He won Best Supporting Actor Golden Globe in 2006 for Dreamgirl. He won Best Comedy Album Grammy in 1984 for Eddie Murphy Comedian. He won in 2020 Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series Emmy for Saturday Night Live. And he won a Screen Actors Guild Award in 2006. Outstanding Actor in a Supporting Role for Dreamgirls. So I think he's won a bunch of other critical awards too, not the least of which was for Dolomite Is My Name, which if you haven't seen, that is awesome. A whole bunch more for Dreamgirls. He won a National Society of Film Critics Award for The Nutty Professor for Best Actor, and he's in the Women Film Critics Circle Hall of Shame for Norbit.
I could see that. I could agree with that.
I could totally see that. I was a kid when I was young. I was a child when I discovered Eddie Murphy, and I discovered his stand-up before anything else because I obviously didn't watch Saturday Night Live. It was between 1980 and 1984. I was between 4 and 8, so I was not up that late at night. My parents weren't that derelict, but I living in a black neighborhood, having fairly liberal enough parents to where I could get access to some adult material, albums, cassette tapes, etc. I got a whole, and in living in the age of the rise of the VHS tape and the video rental store, the mom and pop video rental store. I lived in an age that preceded Blockbuster.
Yeah.
And I used to also around the same time was the rise of like HBO and the HBO comedy half hour or the hour special.
Yeah.
So I early on, between albums, VHS, and HBO, developed a taste for stand-up comedy. So it was entirely possible that if I wasn't shown it by a friend, I absolutely saw Eddie Murphy Raw and Eddie Murphy Delirious on the shelf and rented both.
Oh yeah. I mean, some of my favorite comic bits are Ice Cream Man, Shoe Throwing Mother.
They stuck their face in the water. They came up with fish and they said, "Goody goo goo."
Goody goo goo. What the fuck is Goody goo goo, Gus? Ice Cream Man, Shoe Throwing Mother.
Was that the bit where
the Rocky?
The mom's like, I want to go to McDonald's. Like, we don't need to go to McDonald's. I'll make you a hamburger at home be better than McDonald's. And he's just got this big ass hamburger.
Shoe Throwing Mother is where he talks about his mom would always like bust his ass with the shoe. He says,
right.
It was like a Western, and she why'd you eat the ice cream off the floor, Eddie?
What was funny about Delirious and Raw was like he did, I can't remember which one came first, but he did the bit about what if Mr. T was a homosexual and like hit on him at a party. And I guess Mr. T, and then he told the story about how Mr. T found out about it, like confronted him at a party. It's great. Eddie Murphy, he worked dirty. We were actually talking about this before the show started, that he cursed a lot. He dropped the N-bomb a lot. He was, it's funny. We're going to talk about Harlem Nights in just a few minutes, but he really was like the spiritual successor to Richard Pryor, in the dirty, the dirty black superstar comic role. Yeah. And he actually told a story about how in one of his stand-ups, one of his more famous stand-ups, that like Bill Cosby like confronted him about it, which is really funny given what's happened to Bill Cosby in the last few years. But at the time, no one knew that. And Bill Cosby was like America's dad. And so, black comics looked up to him, and as did Eddie Murphy. And so Eddie Murphy is like, oh my God, Bill Cosby. And Bill Cosby's like, maybe stop cursing so much. And he cried to Richard Pryor about it. And Richard Pryor told him, Do the people like it? Yeah. Are they laughing? Yeah. Well, tell Bill Cosby to shut the fuck up, have a Coke and a smile. No, have a Coke and a smile and shut the fuck up. It's great. I was a huge fan of Eddie Murphy. We've done Long Road to Ruins on the Beverly Hills Cop, The Nutty Professor. 2 out of the 3 movies I watched contemporaneously. I watched Trading Places and Harlem Nights when they came out. Life is the only one I hadn't seen until now. I would say he's not necessarily on my Mount Rushmore because there's only 4 places you can, there's only 4 spots on a Mount Rushmore. But he is definitely in my top 10 favorite comics of all time. What about you, Jason?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, I came up same as you, had the Raw Delirious. That's how my introduction to Eddie Murphy was, and I didn't get introduced to him till later on. Then I actually seen the greatest Saturday Night Live Eddie Murphy clips, and it's like Buckwheat. It's got the Buckwheat album. The Intergalactic Prophylactic, Gumby, just all the Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood. I mean, just all these great things that, and then I started, getting into his film work. And he's had some hits and he's had a few misses.
For every Beverly Hills Cop or 48 Hours, by the way, another series we're going to get to a little later this year.
Yeah.
For every Beverly Hills Cop or 48 Hours or something like that, there's The Adventures of Pluto Nash.
Yeah, or Norbit, or
Haunted Mansion.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a comedian that I hold near and dear to my heart because I did resonate with a lot of his stand-up stuff growing up, and I got into his movies later on. But
what's so funny is that he really crosses into so many different purviews and aesthetics. He can play the clown, he can be silly, he can be a tough guy. God, you see that with Life. He can be intimidating, but he can be gentle, he can be vulnerable. I mean, Eddie Murphy, over the course of his multi-decade career, he didn't just do comedies, he also did dramas. He did some action comedies, and he was one of those comedians that could do just about anything you asked of him. I mean, granted, he like a lot of actors, like a lot of comedians, we talked about this with The Rock, actually. Sometimes they hire you because they want you to do the thing, do the the Eddie Murphy laugh. That's all we wanted out of you. Just be funny, talk fast, and smile, show them pearly whites, and do the laugh. But then he would stretch and do other stuff, and it's amazing. It's so good. And I think I mean, granted, he's obviously won a lot of awards, so it's almost kind of weird that I would say it this way, but I think sometimes he gets underrated because people know that he's a funny comedian.
Yeah,
but he's such a good actor too.
He gets pigeonholed a lot to be that. Now, I'm curious, what was your first Eddie Murphy movie? Because mine might surprise you.
It might have actually been Trading Places.
Mine was The Golden Child.
I want the knife. Yeah.
Golden Child was my introduction to Eddie Murphy. The very first movie that I ever seen, and it's not one of his more well-known movies. It's a hidden gem of his, I feel. And I said,
all right, you know what? Okay, so I'm looking at his filmography. My parents took me to the drive-in to see 48 Hours.
Oh, wow.
I want to say it was like a double feature of 48 Hours and maybe Flashdance. That's how fucking old I am. So that's 1982, which makes me 6 at the time. I know I saw Trading Places when it came out, and that's his second movie in 1983. I've never seen Best Defense, but Beverly Hills Cop I saw, The Golden Child, Beverly Hills Cop 2. Okay, Raw was first. Hey, Jason, remember Coming to America?
Yeah.
I saw that when it came out.
I love. I seen that in theaters.
And his running buddies in that one, Arsenio Hall. By the way, did you used to watch the Arsenio Hall show?
Yes, I did.
Oh, Arsenio Hall is fucking great. I was never a huge fan of talk shows. Johnny Carson, that's my parents' stuff. Dave Letterman, whatever. Arsenio Hall, rapt attention. I was there, man.
Yeah, and what's funny is,
Mhm.
we're going to talk about this. Harlem Nights was the last time that Arsenio Hall and Eddie Murphy did a movie until Coming to America 2, which
Okay.
which is very interesting because um, you had that huge success of Coming to
Hmm.
America, and Eddie Murphy's the kind of person that when he works with somebody, he typically has his certain people he likes to work with. Like we see in Harlem Nights in Life. You see a lot of Bernie Mac. You see,
Hmm.
you got the a lot of the same people. I think Robin Harris is in Harlem Nights.
Before
Uh,
before today, the last contemporaneous thing I saw Eddie Murphy in was Dolomite Is My Name, which is on Netflix, which I can't. We should have reviewed it. It was a period where I necessarily wasn't doing a lot of reviews that weren't in theater for whatever the reasons were. I hadn't started doing a lot of streaming movies, so Dolomite went straight to Netflix, and I watched it one night just on a lark because you know me and
yeah,
hashtag black folks, and I loved the shit out of Dolomite Is My Name.
it's
He's so
it's
good at
not a
that.
bad movie at all. I mean,
Yeah, it's fantastic.
it's one of the and Eddie Murphy's got a few hidden gems, such as like Dolomite, like I
Mhm.
said, Golden Child. There's a few others in
Sure.
there.
And he
Uh,
oscillates, and like I said, he oscillates between like dramas and comedy, and he's all over the place. Eddie Murphy is a very
I mean,
versatile actor.
hell, he'll even tell you he wants to party all the time sometimes.
He his girl likes to party all the time, Jason. Party all the
Yes.
time. By the way, if you
Yeah.
ever hear like the Children of Bodom cover of that, that's pretty fun. All right. Let's get into our first movie here. Harlem Nights. Which the fun thing, which I didn't even realize we did this when we picked these three movies. So I picked the first two. I was like, I don't remember actually how we came to Harlem Nights. I think it was just like I loved it as a kid. I want to watch it. So
I think we both said Harlem Nights because we
right,
both were fond of it.
yeah.
And
And
then
then I
you
was
took
like,
Trading Places and I took Life.
right, because again, Trading Places is one of those movies. Trading Places is one of those movies where it was on all the time on cable. So I've watched it was of the three. I've watched Trading Places like a zillion times. It's like Avengers Endgame, Trading Places. We accidentally picked three Eddie Murphy films where like a big through thread is that they are laden with big time comedians of that era. Harlem Nights is loaded with them. Harlem Nights is like the Avengers of black comedians between Richard Pryor, Red Fox,
Bernie Mac,
yeah,
Eddie
Bernie Mac in
Murphy.
Harlem Nights. I know he's in Life.
Bernie Mac, yeah, I think Bernie Mac's got a cameo. It's not a
Okay.
big part, but I think Bernie Mac.
Fucking Jasmine Guy from who's he? What's he? A Different World. Charlie Murphy. Fuck your couch.
Fuck your count, yeah.
What do you call it? We got Arsenio Hall, like we talked about. I mean, like this is a pretty stellar cast here. And then you have Trading Places, big time SNL partner Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd is. I talked about this the other day. Has turned into a nut, but you can't deny how funny he was at like the height of his powers between like Trading Places, Ghostbusters, and what he did on SNL. Like, there's an old SNL sketch that always makes me laugh with Dan Aykroyd, where him and Gilda Radner are like fighting over this like can of whatever, and it's like it's a dessert topping. No, it's this. It's a dessert. Like they're going back and forth. And he's like, it's a dessert topping. You cow. And finally, someone steps in between them and like it's both.
I stand corrected. He was not in Harlem Nights. I thought he had.
I figured he was just in Life. Good old Django leg. And then it also has Jamie Lee Curtis in that. And then Life, it's him and Martin Lawrence. So you almost get like big time comedian of the era for each one of these. It's really it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So let's get into Harlem Nights specifically. Harlem Nights is a 1989 American crime drama film starring and directed. Oh shit, he directed this? That I didn't realize.
Yes, that's the only movies it directed. I'm pretty
Written
sure.
and directed by Eddie Murphy, who he also wrote it. It co-stars Richard Pryor, who's like Eddie Murphy's like spiritual dad. Michael Lerner, Danny Aiello, Red Fox, in his last film appearance before his death in 1991. Della Reese and Murphy's older brother Charlie Murphy. The film was released theatrically on November 17, 1990 by Paramount Pictures, who gives no fucks, by the way. And the film tells the story of Sugar Ray and Vernis Quick Brown as a team running a nightclub in the late 1930s in Harlem while contending with gangsters and corrupt police officials. Harlem Nights was Eddie Murphy's only directorial effort. He had always wanted to direct and star in a period piece, as well as work with Pryor, whom he considered his greatest influence in stand-up comedy. This was panned, by the way. But it was a financial success, grossing $95 million against a $30 million budget, and has since been regarded as a cult classic. I don't want to, again, burden or laden up our discussion with going through the plot synopsis. Like, needless to say, you know, it's a lot of world building. It's a lot of showing Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor from the beginnings. You know, Richard Pryor is a young man. Eddie Murphy's a little boy when they get together, and kind of Richard Pryor takes him under his wing. Then you see them when they're older and they're running this nightclub and they're like harassed by the Italians and the cops. And, you know, it's just them trying to figure out how they're going to survive all of this. I watched it again. I saw it, like I said, saw it as a kid in 1989. I just watched it again for this review. It is a lot of fun to see this big group of comedians all working together. You know, again, Red Fox, Richard Pryor, Arsenio Hall, and Eddie Murphy. You can always tell. You can always tell when they're having fun on camera. Like this was a group that was happy to do this project. This was a, regardless of what the critics thought of it, this was a passion project, and it shows in the acting. Beyond that, I mean, for a first-time director, I think Eddie Murphy did a really good job with this. What did you think?
Oh, I love Harlem Nights because, like you said, you know, I grew up on Sanford and Son, so seeing her at Fox in an actual film role was very fun. I still watch Sanford and Son actually, and just seeing like the comic genius that they're putting on screen. Like I said, you know, Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy have a great on-screen chemistry together. They just bounce off of each other. And I'm pretty sure that most of the lines weren't written. They was just ad-libbing. And they just like, fuck it, let's go with it and let's put it on film. And it just shows, like, you know, it's kind of the passing the torch, like we stated, of Richard Pryor to Eddie Murphy. Like you said, that comedy genius era moving from one to the other. And this has a little bit of seriousness to it, and that's what's good about it. It weaves the comedy into the seriousness, you know, because Harlem back in these times was, you know, it's predominantly black, but it was trying to be muscled in. You've seen the, you know, running numbers. Yeah,
the Forrest Whitaker show, Godfather of Harlem, does a really great job of dramatizing the antagonism between the Italian mafia and the blacks. And, you know, there's that like leftover sort of classism, racism, where it's like, you know, we're willing to let the blacks do for themselves until they do too well, and then we have to take it from them. You know, story as old as time.
Yeah, it's you know, and it kind of highlights that when he says, you know, you're doing about 15 grand a week. I think our cut should be 10. And you're like, okay, that makes no fucking sense. But yeah, I mean, the one chick in this, the madam.
Oh my God, she's great.
I'll shoot your pinky toe off. Well, right there it is. Shoot my pinky toe off. You nine-toed bitch.
That would be Della Reese, by the way.
Yeah, she is. I think she's kind of something that really holds this movie together, because having her woven in the way she is, she's not like
how sweet of a scene is it after? So there's the whole thing is there's an accusation that stealing is going on. Hope there ain't no thieving going on. There's someone stealing. And Eddie Murphy says it's got to be one of the girls, and Della Reese says the madam is like, my girls don't steal. We're on the up and up for, you know, whores. And Eddie Murphy is like, but they did. There's no other explanation. And she's like, I'm gonna stand up for my girls here. You're being ridiculous. And it just escalates because neither one of them is willing to back down. And then he says the infamous like, I'll shoot your pinky toe off. And he eventually ends up shooting her. He doesn't kill her or anything like that. But later on,
he takes her pinky toe off.
Right. So later on, there's a bit where I think Red Fox and Richard Pryor are at the table, and they're like giving her shit, like, go make us a sandwich, and like they're not willing apologizing to her. They're kind of being a bit shitty to her.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, that's fine. And then Richard Pryor's like, I'm not apologizing for shit. Fuck you. And looks at Eddie Murphy. He's like, you should go and apologize. Eddie Murphy's like, what the fuck? Why? He's like, because I said so, motherfucker. By the way, if I say motherfucker, I really mean something else. Wink.
Yeah.
It's a lot of that going on in this movie. But then he goes in there, and she's complaining about the last sip of orange juice in the jar, which is great. But especially if you live with a house full of people and they're all idiots. There's a lot of that going on. I can't tell you how many one swallow left or completely empty bottles or boxes I've found in this house where, like, are you kidding me? Someone took the last like peanut butter cracker or whatever and didn't throw the box out. Why? But yeah, so she's like bitching about the orange juice, and he walks up behind her and he gives her a kiss, and he's like, I'm sorry. And she doesn't even acknowledge him. She just ignores it basically. And she says something else about the orange juice. He's like, I love you too. And he walks out of the room, and she takes a breath, and she's like, I love that motherfucker.
Yeah.
Goes back to what she's doing. It's really sweet.
Yeah. And like I said, she gives like a kind of a human feeling investment to the movie. But this movie is funny as shit anyway. But you still have that human element. You're still invested in it, and it's still kind of grounded in reality of the time period.
Who had a very similar career to Eddie Murphy, where he did a lot of comedies. They hired him for the silly, but whenever he got to do something serious, he always knocked it out of the park. Richard Pryor. Pryor.
Jim Carrey too.
Oh yeah, Jim Carrey is an example of that. But I'm saying in this movie, if you have to pick a co-star, who better in 1989 than Richard Pryor, where Richard Pryor can go from silly to serious in a heartbeat, and he never misses the ball. He always at least cracks a single. And it's so funny because, like, you think about some of the his partnerships with Gene Wilder, and you look at some of the more silly things he did early on in his career, like The Toy with Jackie Gleason, and you're like, he's another like, you're just bordering minstrel here. And a lot of black comedians kind of did that because that's why they got hired. Like, they want you to play the fool. They want you to be just short of racially insensitive.
And that's what film had. That's what film has a stigma of, is because they did hire a lot of black comedians too, that was just supposed to be funny. They didn't get to show their range. They didn't get to show their acting abilities. They just be funny. Like we said, do the thing. Line.
Right. Do the thing. But then but you can't deny talent. Jackie Robinson, famously, baseball player, broke the color barrier in baseball. At some point, making money is more important than keeping a race you don't like down. And so relating that to both Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor, though they obviously didn't come up during Jackie Robinson's time. Well, Richard Pryor did, but you couldn't deny Richard Pryor. Like, he's on screen and he's so good. And like, even something as silly as The Toy, just go back to that, he has some really sweet dramatic moments in that, as dumb as that movie is, and it's the dumb.
And it's coming in 2024.
But are they remaking The Toy?
No, we're reviewing it next year in Black History Month.
Oh, that's right. Oh my God, yes. Please, we get through this year. So anyway, Richard Pryor, when he got the opportunity to stretch and do dramatic roles, knocked it out of the park every time. He's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and a lot, like I said, a lot of his early stuff, the Gene Wilder stuff, Moving, The Toy, Car Wash, they were basically...
Oh my God, I forgot about Moving. Moving is the dumb, but it's so funny.
Yeah.
Give me back my shit!
Yeah, because he's playing this really off the edge black guy.
I gave him the wrong finger.
But it's so stupid. It's so stupid.
for 2 points, what wrestler's in that movie?
King Kong Bundy.
There it is. All right. Anything else about anything else about Harlem Nights? Just my final word about Harlem Nights, as great as it is, as much fun it is to watch. Criminal misuse of Jasmine Guy. I feel like they didn't give her a lot.
I mean, she had sex and got her face blown up. What else do you want from her?
I don't know. I liked her on A Different World, and they gave her a lot because she was, especially after Lisa Bonet left the show. She was it. She was the girl.
World. I loved A Different World.
Oh, Different World. Let me tell you, when I had to put A Different World up against The Cosby Show, I would have chosen A Different World every time.
Yeah, I think it just kind of resonated with me a little bit more. I wasn't a big Cosby Show fan. But no, I loved A Different World though.
Okay.
And I mean that's like, I loved Martin.
See, I wasn't a huge fan of Martin, but we'll get to that.
Martin was great. I loved Martin.
Listen, the only way you're going to show your ally credentials around here, sir, is if you at least watched one episode. I'll give you one episode of Homeboys from Outer Space.
I've never seen it.
Racist.
Well, I've never even heard of it, so therefore I've never
Oh my God!
it.
What did you not get UPN fucking in West Virginia?
No, we didn't get MTV till I was a senior in high school.
Oh my God, I can't even deal with you people. Yes, Homeboys from Outer Space. UPN went all in on black shows for a while. It was Sister, Homeboys from Outer Space. It was a whole bunch. And I gave that show one episode. I was like, oof, this is too dumb even for me. All right, so yeah, criminal misuse of Jasmine Guy, who I think I wish she had gone a little bit further in her career and given more chances. Like I don't know, like
yeah,
I don't know why her manager couldn't get her more roles, or what about her, like she's halfway successful, but you would think like as pretty as she was, as good as she was as an actress, she'd have gotten more.
Yeah, I think maybe she just didn't want to do acting much, and I think she just maybe took her life in a different direction because she was a talented actress, and she had the look.
She's got the look. She says hello.
All right, Roxanne.
I love you. Come join the joyride. She's got, to her credit, she's been acting. Jesus Christ! In the year of our Lord 2022, she did 3 movies. One of them was a television one. She did Vanish, Searching for My Sister, A Wesley Christmas, and The Ladymakers.
Heard of none of them.
She's been in at least something every year.
Really?
Almost every year that she's been an actress. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anything else about? Oh my God.
Nah.
Okay, then let's move on.
She's in what?
Sorry, she was in a TV movie, Carrie. Something else I was like, ugh. Oh, she's in Stomp the Yard Homecoming. Oh my God, she's in Scary Movie 5. All right, that's enough about that.
I think I quit watching after Scary Movie 2 because the bar was set so high. Use my strong hand.
All right, so let's talk about Trading Places. Again,
please don't.
Is a great. Shut up! Shut your whore mouth. Trading Places is a 1983 American comedy film directed by John Landis. If you don't know who John Landis is like the comedian, like the comedian, director, writer of the 80s. He did fucking everything. He's an American comedy, horror, and fantasy filmmaker. He's best known for comedy films that he's directed, like the Kentucky Fried Movie, one of my personal favorites that Robert and I actually did a live reaction to, Animal House, The Blues Brothers, An American Werewolf in London, Trading Places, Three Amigos. So Three Amigos.
I love Three Amigos.
Three Amigos. I made my dad take me to Taco Bell and then that movie because I needed to have an all Mexican night. Yes, even then, Jason Teasley of the Screaming Boy podcast.
You had themes.
I had to synergize. Coming to America, Beverly Hills Cop 3. He directed Thriller and Black or White, and he's done a whole host of other stuff. I mean, he's got quite the storied career. Yeah. So anyway, Trading Places was directed by John Landis. It stars Dan Aykroyd, Eddie Murphy, Ralph Bellamy, Don Amish, Denholm Elliott, and Jamie Lee Curtis. And the film tells the story of an upper-class commodities broker, Dan Aykroyd, and a poor street hustler, Eddie Murphy, whose lives cross when they are unwittingly made the subject of an elaborate bet to test how each man will perform when their life circumstances are swapped. This was a huge hit. It was made on a budget of $15 million. It made $120 million. And some accolades here. It, let's see. At the 41st Golden Globe Awards in 1984, the film received 2 nominations for Best Musical or Comedy, which is lost to Yentl. Best actor in Yentl. Nelly. Best actor in a musical or comedy. And at the 56 Academy Awards, it was nominated for Best Original Score, which it lost. There's a lot here. I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but one of the things I love about this movie, and it kind of hit me watching it again this past week for this review, because as a kid when I watched it, it was just it's a fun movie to watch because it was like, oh, especially like in what fucking year was this?
84.
Yeah, especially in 1984. It's like, oh, the black guy is rich and the white guy is poor. Fun. And I'd like to remind people I grew up in an all-black neighborhood, so this I really keyed into. But I was like, oh, look, the black guy is in charge and the white guy sucks. This is fantastic. Film, everybody. Yes, even at like 8 years old. So I like that about the movie. But there was a part in the beginning where the two brothers are talking, and it never connected with me before because I was too young to really understand what he was talking about. But the film deals in a very silly, very slight way, but it is dealing with it. It's dealing with the whole nature or nurture question. And if you don't know what that is, it for those that might be watching, they're like nature, nurture. So is it that your environment and your upbringing is what dictates how you will behave and the kind of decisions you'll make and what kind of person you will be, or is it strictly genetics? And as it turns out, every study shows, mostly based on twin studies, it's a combination of both. But there was a long-running debate among social scientists and biologists, geneticists, which one it might, if it was one or the other. And Trading Places in 1984 was dealing with that and it's a movie about a social experiment where basically for a $1 bet, these two old commodities brokers are like, let's completely reduce Dan Aykroyd to like a homeless guy, a criminal homeless drug dealer, and let's give Eddie Murphy his life and see what happens. And Dan Aykroyd completely goes to pieces and like pulls guns on them and just deteriorates mentally. And Eddie Murphy, it's funny. They talk about being a social worker for over 20 years now. I get into a lot of conversations, do a lot of reading, that sort of thing. And what is often said is, do we give people housing, just as an example? Do we just give them a home? Do we, what do we do more projects? Do we, somebody said like there was a program in Utah for a while. They were literally just building small homes for homeless people. They were like, here's a house. You don't have to pay for it. There's an argument to be made that when something is earned, when it's truly yours, when you worked hard for it, and it is yours, you will take care of it. You would not know that by living in my house, but don't tell my wife I said that. But if you give something to someone, they won't take care of it, and that's why the projects, that is the argument, at least some people's argument for why like the projects are all like, dilapidated and, full of drug dealers. What the movie is dealing with in a very, like I said, funny and silly way is like, if you just gave a homeless guy the life of a rich, successful person, how would he act? What would he do? And the movie certainly has a perspective on that. The perspective is he would ascend. He would rise to that level. It doesn't always work out that way because there is a genetic component. There is a resiliency component. It really depends on the guy or the woman that you do that for, ultimately. But the movie's perspective is that as shitty as a person as Eddie Murphy was, when given the opportunity, he becomes honest. He becomes loyal. He does all of these things. And it's like, oh my gosh, look, see? And then Dan Aykroyd, who was, model citizen, just falls completely apart. It's very Hollywood, and Hollywood is very liberal, except for some parts here or there. It is a funny but political movie, and taken at face value, it's entertaining. But gosh, the more you think about it, the more loaded it is.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I told you off air, and I've got ridiculed for it. I wasn't really a fan. I don't know if it was because I had such high expectations going in, because you yourself built it up to me. Several other people built it up,
It's a
and
classic.
and Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd, but I guess I was just waiting for it to be a lot better than it actually was. It was kind of
It's
one of these
not.
movies.
It's not slapsticky. Like a lot of like the early Eddie Murphy stuff tends to be Eddie Murphy mugging for the camera. But that's the thing, is like after the first 20 minutes, when he starts to take over Dan Aykroyd's life, he stops being the funny one. Dan Aykroyd's the funny one.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things. I mean, it's personal preference. Not saying that
Mhm.
the movie's bad at all.
Mhm.
It's just I think it was more of it was built up to me, and I just had this like overwhelming expectation, especially being put up with in the realm of Harlem Nights and Life, that
Mhm.
two movies I love, that I just kind of automatically put it on that pedestal, and when it didn't live up to that expectation, I was like,
Mhm.
and I don't hate anybody that thinks Trading Places is a great movie.
How can you
know.
how can you hate a movie with Jamie Lee Curtis's tits? That's ridiculous.
Well, I didn't say that I hate it. I just said it didn't live up to expectations.
I believe it lived up to my expectations. Arrgh.
Nothing cannot live up to your expectations if it has tits in it, Mark. Male or
true.
female.
It's true.
But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of social commentary.
Mhm.
Now, if I would have seen this as younger, I definitely would not have been into it at all. I probably wouldn't have been able
Really?
to watch it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, when Mortimer I think it's Mortimer who like keels over and nearly fucking dies of a heart attack. And they're like, no, it's not Mortimer, it's the other one. It's like
should we call the ambulance?
Fuck him.
Fuck him. Open these phones back up.
No,
I mean, it had
back in here. That's some funny shit, dude.
I'm not saying that it didn't have its moments.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just saying, as a younger adult, as a young kid or a young adult, this would not have resonated. I would have been bored out of my skull for this.
A day or so ago, and I don't remember why I said it, but I said something in the house, and it was like a quote from an episode of What's Happening. It's like the one episode of What's Happening I remember. Do you ever watch What's Happening as a kid?
Yeah, I watched it some.
Okay. So if you don't, for you youngins who are watching this, or for you white people who didn't watch anything with black folks in it, What's Happening was a sitcom. Everyone knows who Rerun is. Rerun was the dancer, the fat dancer with the beret.
Yeah.
But there were three other characters on that show. There was Shirley,
JJ,
yeah. Hey, and whatever his name was. Anyway, there's an episode where Shirley, she's a waitress in a diner that they hang out in, and she's like, I want better for myself. So she quits the diner and she gets a job in a law firm, and she's not qualified for it, but they hire her anyway, and they don't hire the qualified white woman. And there's a question about it, like one white person says to the other in the law office, like, why aren't we hiring the qualified person? And the old white lawyer says very loudly and very proudly, because what this office needs is a little color. And there's a lot of that in the 80s, man. There's a lot of like latent racism and like sort of showing that the change from like quite racist to latent racism.
And what's funny,
well, I bring that up because like there's a at the point at which we're ready to get into the third arc, the third act of Trading Places, Dan Aykroyd has completely lost his mind. He's pulled a gun on them. He's trying to plant drugs in the office. Like, he is beyond desperate. And I think this is about the point where he ODs and nearly dies. Right. So he's being carted off by the police. And Eddie Murphy is who turned him in. Eddie Murphy is Honest Injun, all of that. And so the brothers are talking, and they're like there's nothing to do here. What could we do? Dan Aykroyd's completely gone to pieces. All we're left with is Eddie Murphy. And there's a question of like, well, should we let him continue to run the commodities brokership? I'm just gonna quote it. If you're sensitive, if you're like, oh my god, he said the word, just fucking deal with it. It's a quote from the movie. But he just flat out says, "You think I'd let a nigger run our company?" Like, you hear that now. That has not aged well.
No.
But even back then, that's like, like he said it, like, because again, the whole movie is like, it was just sort of teetering on that line, and then he just fucking blurts it out, and you're like, wow.
it's there.
Yeah, it's like,
but
we're just gonna call it out, huh?
Well, I mean, that takes me back to something I seen while watching this is the Dave Chappelle skit where they get onto him for saying retard.
Yeah.
And he says, no, he calls, and I'm going to quote, so don't cancel me. He says that he had a meeting with the executives of Comedy Central when doing the Dave Chappelle show. And they said, well, we love all the skits, but we just need to take one word out. And he was like, what word is that? There's like, the word faggot. He was like, wait, I could say the N word as many times as I want. And he's like, yeah, but you're not gay. And he goes, well, I ain't either, but, and
all this stuff. Did you ever see Dr. Katz?
No.
Okay, so Dr. Katz is a really weirdly animated show. It's like computer graphics, but it's like squiggly line, and it's about a therapist and his son, and the whole gimmick of the show was like celebrity patients. And there's one where it's Dave Chappelle, and Dave Chappelle is like, I am a racism connoisseur, and like I've been down to Mississippi with a racism is magnifique. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, but like
some of even like early like Dave Chappelle stuff where he talks about like latent racism, and he was like, I just wish one day racism would just be overt, just overt. We can all just deal with it. And he just goes through a whole like litany of everyone is racist, and here's the shit they would say about each other.
Yeah, and that's going back to the 80s, and this is a fine example of that. You see the blatant racism, the classism and everything in this, just because how far Dan Aykroyd falls and what how he's treated and everything, and it's just like.
Sorry, I think the early Dan Aykroyd Eddie Murphy interactions are hilarious. Like, Eddie Murphy is walking backwards away from the cops, and he bumps into Dan Aykroyd, and again, I almost don't know which is worse.
The Benny Hill chase.
But like the calling out of the mistreatment of black people versus like the calling out of how awful white people can be, and it's exaggerated for film.
Yeah,
but, like. There are people who act the way Dan Aykroyd acted, maybe currently do, act the way Dan Aykroyd acts, where he's absolutely like gaslighting the situation. Eddie Murphy clearly bumped into him and is trying to hand him back the briefcase. And Dan Aykroyd's yelling, just take it, don't hurt me. And then and he's like, I don't want your fucking briefcase, take it. And he's like, oh, don't hurt me. And then he finally, like, the cops are chasing him and he runs off and he doesn't think to just drop the briefcase. And then there's Dan Aykroyd going, he's stealing my briefcase that I wouldn't take twice when it went off.
Yeah. And, and in today's climate, I'm surprised that Dan Aykroyd hasn't come under fire for being in blackface. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my God. Okay, so if you haven't seen the movie, there's a scene on a train. So the whole gimmick is, and it's Chekhov's gun. It's great. This is a tight script. It's set up in the beginning that they are paying a guy to do insider trading. Essentially, he's getting the commodities brokers a crop report.
Yeah, it's a crop report for frozen orange juice.
Right. So they know what to do in as far as buying or selling orange crops on the commodities market. And if they know what the gimmick is ahead of time, then they can corner the market on it and they'll be rich. So once Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy figure out what the jig is, they hatch a plan to intercept the crop report before it gets into the hands of the brothers. And they successfully do. But the way they do it is, so the guy who is the principal in the Breakfast Club, by the way, also a staple of the 80s fucking comedies, by the way. Beeks is his character's name. So he's on the train, and then slowly but surely they all come into the train, and they all have a part to play in the subterfuge in getting the briefcases switched. And Eddie Murphy comes in, and he's playing an exchange student from Cameroon. He's dressed in all African garb. And Jamie Lee Curtis comes in, and she's dressed up as a Swedish tart.
Then you got the butler comes in as a Jewish priest.
I don't think he was a Jewish priest, but okay. Denholm something or other. He comes in. He's an Irish priest of some description, and then finally Dan Aykroyd comes in full blackface, and
it is hilarious.
He's playing a Jamaican, and him and Eddie Murphy are cutting up, and this is again. I just, as an aside, we could have done just an entire on trial on Trading Places, because in the first 10 minutes I would have just talked about the art of the SNL movie, because they can't all be zingers. When SNL guys did movies together, again, they were some of the best comedians of their time, depending on which era we're talking about. And there are some where these guys would leave SNL and go to do movies. Dan Aykroyd, being a big example of this. Bill Murray,
John Belushi.
They would leave and put out classic movies, Ghostbusters, Trading Places, etc. They would just go on to have these stellar acting careers for the first 10 years they were out of SNL. Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd are awesome in this together. And I say that now, and I cite that scene because so much of the movie they're separated. It's a lot. Dan Aykroyd's, a lot of his stuff is with Jamie Lee Curtis. Yeah. Eddie Murphy, a lot of his stuff is with not Dan Aykroyd or Jamie Lee Curtis. And when you can finally get Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy in the room together and just let them cut up and be comics, and let the art of being a comedian, the genius of it is being able to do and say funny stuff without being dependent on the script or direction. It's being able to
impromptu.
Yeah, being able to ad lib. And I don't know how much of that scene was ad lib, but they look like they're having a ball. So Dan Aykroyd's got a wig on. He's got the Jamaican hat. He's wearing all denim, and he's doing a bad Jamaican accent. He's in blackface. God, you could not do this today. And Eddie Murphy's this cat, African, and they're just like, "Hey, remember when we did the thing?" And they're dancing and singing, and they look like they're having I just want to be on set and try and watch as John Landis tries not to crack up laughing. It's so good.
Yeah, the third act of this movie is what saved it for me. I mean, the third act of this movie I thought was amazing, because you see a lot of the Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd interaction and them playing off of each other. That's what I loved about the movie. But it's the getting to that point is what really bogged down for me, and I really wasn't that much into. But once it got to the third act, it was like, I want this. I want this for the entire movie.
Well, again, it's like that Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor team up.
Yeah.
When they're together, they're fantastic. When they're separated, it's not as much magical. Same with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy. When they're together, they're amazing. But they spend most of the movie separated, and you're seeing their two separate stories. And again, to round this back to the beginning, I think if I had to criticize Trading Places, it's that you hire Eddie Murphy because you want him to be funny, and when he gets to cut up and be the con artist, that whole opening sequence where the cops are like you said, the Betty Hill chase through the brokerage office, and then he's underneath the table and they pull him out and they all pull their guns on him. Again, a scene that has not aged well. And he's like, "The problem, officer." It's great. And then they clean him. And then after they get through the initial explaining to him what they're doing, he's not funny anymore. And I wanted to just talk about this really quickly, because I talked about the social part of this, social science part of it. There's a scene where Eddie Murphy, kind of enjoying his newly acquired largesse, invites everybody at a bar. He's Mr. Impressive.
Oh, yeah.
He invites everybody at a bar to his house for a party. And he's walking around the party and he's like, "This is a Persian rug. Get off of it. Use a coaster." He becomes
who's put their clothes out on my floor?
Right. He goes up to the bedroom and there's some naked chick waiting for him. And he's like, get the fuck out of here. And it's like one night. It took one night for him to become like hoity. And it goes to what I was saying before about the belief, such as it is that if you give somebody something, they'll take care of it, as opposed to if they earn it. He was given this house and everything, and suddenly like his whole entire personality changed. Or maybe it was there all along, but he just had nothing. It seems to be the film's implication. In any case, I just thought it was funny, like, because the film, because it's like I said, it's a tight script. It's only 2 hours. It's just short or 2 hours long. And I don't know, maybe for you it felt its length, but for me, like they move this along pretty quickly. And Eddie Murphy does not metamorphosize for very long.
No, it goes through pretty seamlessly. It's not
Sorry, Dan Aykroyd as he's bonding out of jail. Those men wanted to have sex with me. Hey Dan, I need you to do that line again, but more like an asshole. You got it, John. So good.
But yeah, the like I said, I think it's for me it was the expectation, and because once we got to that third act, I was invested.
Right. Oh my god, what's missing now, I think, in modern film versus films of the 80s is making use of the setting. Like this stuff, this one does a really good job of making use of like the because it's like one of those Stranger in Strange Land, Alien World kind of a things. Like how many of us have been in been on a stock floor, been in the stock market, commodities trading, like who the fuck, we don't know anything about that shit. Like, and so the fact that the entire like third act of the movie is them, pulling a fast one, and it takes place on that floor, and you get to see what that's like for them. Like, that's a really cool thing, and I don't think you see that too much in film these days.
No, I mean, and it kind of shows you the upper echelon versus the homeless community and what goes on.
All right. Anything else about Trading Places?
No. Let's move on.
All right, Jason. We're gonna talk about Life. Nelly. Life is a 1999 American buddy comedy drama film directed by Ted Demme. All right. So what did Ted Demme do? Ted Demme was an American director, producer, and actor. He is known for directing, among other things, Blow from 2001. Life,
good movie.
Talking about. He directed the Dennis Leary comedy special Lock and Load, a couple episodes of Homicide. He directed The Ref with Dennis Leary, which is amazing. He directed No Cure for Cancer, another Dennis Leary comedy album. And he directed a few episodes of Yo MTV Raps.
Yes.
Yeah, buddy.
We're showing our age on that one.
Yes, sir. What you watch more of, homeboy? Yo MTV Raps or Headbangers Ball? There's only one answer to that.
Mine, and it's different from yours. I was more of Yo MTV Raps.
I know what you're talking about. I didn't watch fucking Headbangers Ball until I was in like junior high. I grew up on Yo MTV Raps. Yeah. Aside. Except that I was born in New York. Wu-Tang. Wu-Tang. Anyway, now that I'm
speaking of which, there's a Oh Dirty Bastard song that's been stuck in my head for 4 days, and I just can't get it out. And I've tried everything, but I cannot get "Baby I Got Your Money" out of my head. And the video, and I watched the video, and it made it even worse.
The film stars Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence. It is the second film featuring Murphy and Lawrence together. The first being Boomerang, which I've also seen. The cast, this is another like Avengers level fucking cast of black actors. Ned Beatty, R. Lee Ermey, Oba Babatunde, Bernie Mac, the late Bernie Mac, Anthony Anderson, a very young Anthony Anderson.
Yeah.
I don't recognize him.
Miguel like Nunez, 18.
Another incredibly young Bokeem Woodbine, because if you see him now, he almost looks like a different person. Guy Torrey, Michael Taliaferro, Barry Shabaka, Henley. The film's format is a story being told by an elderly inmate about two of his friends, Ray and Claude, who are both wrongfully convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. It received an Oscar nomination for Best Makeup at the 72 72nd Academy Awards. Life failed to meet the studio's expectations at the box office and received mixed reactions from the critics. The film later found a strong cult following among Murphy and Lawrence's fans, establishing Life as a cult classic. Yes, this did not even make its budget. It's an $80 million budget and it made $73 million. So not a hit for Murphy and Universal Pictures. But you wanted to talk about it. So why do you want to talk about it?
Because this is one of those movies that resonates on so many levels.
Because you've been sentenced to life in Mississippi?
No, I'm just saying you have that one person that, you're kind of, you end up together by circumstance. And you have your ups and downs with this. This really relates to me and you, Mark. You have your ups and downs. You get called an asshole, and when you troll people in the chat,
quite a lot. You're talking about yourself. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, when it comes down to it, they got each other's back. They do have the friendship, and they would do anything for each other. But there's just a friction because they're constantly butting heads, and they're just these. And if
I was gonna say, okay, so I know how you relate to this movie because I kind of relate to it the same way. Because you ever have that one friend who it's like he's a dreamer, but he's also kind of like a ne'er-do-well. He's kind of a what's the word I was looking for? He's kind of like a scamp.
Yeah.
It's like
he's always got some kind of plan, but never.
Yeah,
he's got a plan.
Responsibility for anything.
He's got a plan, but he's got an idea, but not a plan to make it happen. But he has nefarious means that he plans on doing to make it happen.
So you have Martin Lawrence, who's playing like the straight and narrow guy, who I've always struggled with people who I don't feel like put effort into anything, but yet people run to them, people chase them. Mm-hmm. They are just dipped in fucking shit for whatever the reasons are. It's like they just have something about them where they don't have to actually try at anything, but people will just run and do for them and think there's something magical about them. And then you have and that's Eddie Murphy. And you have like the Martin Lawrence character who's like doing all the right things, making all the right decisions, doing the hard work, being a good citizen, and nothing ever goes right for him. And he's looking at Eddie Murphy like, why does everyone love you so much? Why does everyone hate me and love you? You're shit. And he's like, what are you gonna do? I want, that is the first thing I picked up about life. It's like, I feel you, Martin Lawrence. I can feel you in this movie, man. Because like the whole thing is, he gets roughed up Martin Lawrence gets roughed up and he loses his money, and that's what gets the ball rolling in the wrong direction for him. But as soon as he gets hooked up with Eddie Murphy, everything just goes downhill in rapid fashion. And Martin Lawrence, like the whole time, is like, I just want to get my life back on track. And Eddie Murphy's like, let's go gamble. Let's do this. Let's go to, let's go to Paradise Alley. Come on, Pinocchio. It'll be fun. And of course, they all turn into donkeys. Life, ladies and gentlemen. Life, Pinocchio, same movie. But like,
as long as stop Peter Pan.
And then the whole time they're in prison. In Mississippi, by the way, by way of New York, there's Martin Lawrence is like, I just want to do my time, try to get a pardon, try to do things the right way. Doing things the right way never works out for him. It doesn't work out for Eddie Murphy either, but at least he has fun trying. And I enjoyed this movie, Jason. I had never seen it. I think by 1999, I kind of give it up on Eddie Murphy for a while, so I never saw this one. But this is pretty stellar.
Yeah, and the premise is Martin Lawrence has got his girlfriend out. They're out eating. He goes to the bathroom. Eddie Murphy. Takes his wallet.
He ends up he gets roughed up by like local gangsters and they take his money, and then Eddie Murphy pickpockets him and he gets an empty wallet.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because Eddie Murphy gets, and then they go out. They got this mob guy or something.
Yeah.
And so he was like, all right, I want, and they're forced together. They're not like willing to go.
Well,
so they're forced together to make this
Eddie Murphy
run.
So the club owner is Spanky, and he owes Spanky money. And, they've already like roughing up Martin Lawrence for trying to dine and dash, essentially. So so they're drowning him, and Eddie Murphy's like, I got a scam. I'm gonna go get moonshine. I'm gonna come back with it, and you're gonna get your money, and everything's gonna be fine. Well, I need a guy with me. And they're like, okay, well, pick any of my guys. And he's like, I don't want any of your guys. Your guys will shoot me and take the moonshine. I want him. He's a square. And so he pulls Martin Lawrence out of the fucking New York
harbor,
out of the New York harbor, and and they head down to Mississippi together. And Martin Lawrence is like, I don't even want to talk to you. Just like get me out of this. And while they're down there, Eddie Murphy they run afoul of the local sheriff, who ends up killing a guy that they were playing poker with, and they are blamed for his murder, and that's how they get life.
Yeah, because you don't trust your soul to a backwoods Southern lawyer.
No, I'm white, and I once got pulled over in North Carolina for speeding, and they were like, "So I would just pay your ticket because you don't want to come back here. In fact, I would advise you not to, city boy." Like, oh Jesus, sorry, other white officer.
Yeah, Ronnie Adams runs a tight ship in North Carolina.
He certainly does, Ollie. Anyway, so what else about life?
This is actually you actually see the comedic genius of Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence, as well as the dramatic side, because they're not. This isn't like a laugh a minute movie.
Yeah.
You have some serious tones of it, especially when they get older. You start seeing the people that were in there. You kind of get this little montage of like radio,
everyone disappearing,
Goldmouth, dying off and disappearing, and and like you said, Martin Lawrence had this scheme. Well, not really a scheme. It was, what they call him. What was his name? I can't think of the guy's name. The baseball player.
Let's say Bokeem Woodbine's character, where they try to get him out of prison to go play baseball, and they're going to go with him. Yeah. They're like, no, we just want the baseball player. Thanks.
Yeah, they're like, we're his handlers.
Yeah.
Like, no. Well, a pardon costs money, and
we'll handle him just fine. Thanks.
Yeah, and and then you get the really heartbreaking thing, and it probably doesn't resonate with everybody, but it's kind of heartbreaking for me when he's talking to. When Eddie Murphy's talking to the one inmate that's got his release papers, but he's like, I can't go home. They don't know me.
So yeah, okay. So I want to talk about that, but before we do, I want to talk about the scene where it's my favorite scene in the movie, where Eddie Murphy.
Cornbread.
No.
You're
going to eat that. Now I know why you say you're going to eat that cornbread.
Yeah.
It's right out of Oz. No, the scene where Eddie Murphy is talking about the Boom Boom Room. Now Eddie Murphy told Martin Lawrence while they were driving that he wanted to open up his own club and he was going to call it the Boom Boom Room. So they're talking in the yard one day, and he was like, "Oh, if you ever go to New York City, you should go to the Boom Boom Room." It's like, "Where's that?" Well, it doesn't exist yet. It's in my head, but when I get out of here, I'm going to make it, and it's going to be the best place in Harlem. Okay, so now it's night, and they're laying in their bunks, and he starts talking about the Boom Boom Room like it already exists, and because it's prison. And you see the same thing and the same people, and you do the same thing every day, day in and day out for the entirety of your sentence. They're all craving stimulation. They're craving imagination. They're craving fiction. And Eddie Murphy gives it to them in abundance. And initially Martin Lawrence like, shut the fuck up. It's not even real. And everyone's just like, we're fine with this. You shut up.
And then
I've been Martin Lawrence. I get it. So
he's the bus boy.
It's not real. We don't care. Like, oh, why don't you people like important stuff? Anyway, so like I totally get where Martin Lawrence is coming from. But yeah, everybody in the prison bunk is like, tell us more, tell us the story, Eddie Murphy. And he starts talking about the Boom Boom Room. And why I love this scene is it shifts perspective. And it's now we're in Eddie Murphy's imagination, and all the characters are there, and they're having the time of their lives. And the character that you were just referring to, the gay character, who I don't remember who plays him, but it's highly insinuated that he's gay throughout the movie.
Oh yeah.
And then and so when it cuts to the fantasy, the gay character is in like full drag, and
he's like a loud singer.
He is like singing, and he looks like what's her face from Temple of Doom. Good old whatever her name is. Anyway,
Grace Jones.
No,
why am I thinking Grace Jones?
wrong woman entirely. Anyway, so
Could be Grace Jones.
it couldn't. So it cuts to him, and he's decked out in like full dragon. He looks awesome, by the way. like I don't know what your thing is about men dressed as women, men in drag, but he beautiful. And then and then every character kind of has like a moment in Eddie Murphy's fantasy.
They're asking, "What am I doing?"
Yeah,
and he kind of lays out what they're doing. Like Goldmouth, yeah, we need a bouncer, so and you see Goldmouth over there just dancing as he's the bouncer, and yeah, it kind of gives an escapism to the inmates.
It's a great scene, and life can be a little depressing, and the movie's not always happy either. But this is one of those really, really great cinematic moments, especially in a movie that there's not a lot of scenery changes. It's kind of in one location. It's kind of one location. The other thing I was going to talk about with this movie is so they spend 40 years in this prison before they finally, spoilers, escape at the end, and you get to see their friendship kind of rise and fall and rise again over the course of the 40 years. Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence, just like Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, have stellar chemistry together. Just amazing chemistry. Martin Lawrence, as I know, is not everyone's cup of tea. He wasn't my favorite comedian. I have watched the show Martin, and I've seen a bunch of Martin Lawrence's stand-up, including the one after he recovered from whatever mental breakdown he was having, which was funny as shit, by the way. So I think I went to the movies to see the Martin Lawrence stand-up after he came back after his mental breakdown. And he was like trying to explain like why he was like naked and running in the street. And he starts telling this like cockamamie story. And then he's like, "Nah, I'm just kidding. I was smoking crack, y'all." And it's laugh out of the entire audience. It's kind of sad, actually. But like, Martin Lawrence was never my favorite comedian. He was kind of like the generation behind me, like guys more like Robert and Sean Comer's age, my wife's age. But for me, he was kind of like, you're not as funny as Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor and Bill Cosby, so fuck off. But I know he was a huge hit with a lot of people, especially younger than I am. And I can't deny his chemistry with Eddie. Like, I believe they're friends. Their chemistry together is pretty amazing. They're ad-libbing, they're quipping with each other. It's a lot of what carries this movie.
Yeah, and going back to what I was saying, the gay character gets the release papers, and he's like, I can't go home because my family don't see me like this, and Eddie Murphy's sitting there trying, oh no, it's changed in this time, and rather than be discharged from this, he decides to make a run.
Yeah, he provokes the guards to shoot him.
Yeah, he decides to make a run for it, and he would rather die than go back out into the world.
Well, he's not going to escape the prison. He was clearly running so they'd shoot him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He would rather die than go back out into the world.
Right.
Because in the prison, he could be himself. He didn't have to
whatever year this is, if we're in the 30s or 40s by this point. He's like, it's the 30s and 40s. I'm black in Mississippi. Guess what? Being gay is not going to work for me. I'm better off in prison. And then when they're like, no, you're being released, like there's nothing you can do about it. And that's a real thing. Like there are people even now, like never mind being gay, like just the whole concept of like experience of being in prison. Dude, there are people who don't want to leave the jail. People, they're like, we release people like in jail is less than a year and very much sometimes less than a day. And people like we release people from jail all the time, and they get themselves arrested for trespassing. Want to know where? At the fucking jail. That's where, because they don't want to leave. Like they're as they say, 3 hots in a cot. They're fine with it.
And
people,
it's
like,
heartbreaking.
You get institutionalized in prison. I mean, Oz talked about this a lot, actually. You get institutionalized in prison. You don't know how to I was thinking about like the Shawshank Redemption and a couple of other movies where guys, they go back to the street and they just don't know how to relate to people anymore. They don't know how to live in the world anymore. It's sad, actually. And life kind of deals with that. They pinned it on him being gay and it being whatever year this is. But I would say his experience is well shared regardless of sexuality.
Yeah. Anything else you want to discuss about life? I mean,
no,
outside of the stellar cast.
No, what do you Bernie Mac, who is one of my favorite comedians of all time, also.
Oh, I love Bernie Mac.
he had such a great case of crazy eyes throughout this entire movie. It's so good.
Jiggling.
Well, like the way, like that whole thing, and like the way he walked and did, like Bernie Mac, again, known for being a comedian, known for doing the bit about the kids and everything. Kind of got pigeonholed, but I'll tell you, Bernie Mac's stellar actor, and when he has to create a character the way he does in life, phenomenal. Absolutely, like Bernie Mac completely disappears. He's great. Beyond that, no, I don't have anything else to say about life.
All right. Well, you can find me plastered all over the Wrestling Broadcasting Network for the next month.
Jason Teasley, resident homeless here at the Rattling and Broadcasting Network.
I think I'll be back with you next Tuesday, or this coming Tuesday, when we review
just
Creed 3.
We got rid of Robert, and it's just me and you talking Creed 3.
Shirtless. With pasties on my nipples.
Fantastic.
I just got. I'm going to be joining Alexis and Jesse on the Last of Us review.
And that's going to be a week from Wednesday. It's going to be on the 15th.
Then I've got there's so much shit that I'm on. I gotta check my calendar. Then on the 14th, I'm back with you and Robert for Screams. No, you're not here.
Yeah, that's Alexis' show. I'll be on a cruise.
Yeah, that's right. You're going to be on the cruise. That's your one night off. And I'm back on the 14th with Scream 6 review. Then somehow I got put on the Shazam. So I'm doing that on the 21st.
Are you?
That was you have me.
I only put you on because you asked for it.
I've never asked to be on Shazam.
Oh, then I'll fucking take you off.
Okay, so you'll see me on 5 additional shows here on the Rattling Broadcasting Network.
There are 10 commandments.
Yeah. But yeah, you could find me sprinkled all over the network here doing TV and movie reviews. We're getting ready. I just spoke to Tyler earlier this week. We're getting ready to ramp up the NFL draft material, and you're going to see us back with Mosaic MC on all your podcast platforms, as well as Instagram and TikTok. Look for some hot takes and some insights of your fantasy football. We're getting ready. We're going to be doing another creators league. We did one this past year. It was really successful. So anybody out there listening, please get in touch with us. If you'd be interested in the Guillotine League we run, winner chooses charity. Everybody chips in $5. Winner chooses charity, and we donate to it. And it's really good community. You make some good friends, a lot of good trash talking. And it's just kind of building everything up so we can, find a source that, one of us feels strongly about, and we can, make a donation on the league's behalf.
All right, folks, that wraps up Black History Month in the year of our Lord 2023. 3 shows, check them all out. We did a survey of Eddie Murphy tonight. A week or so ago, we did a survey of Pam Grier movies, and we kicked things off with a tribute to the 90s gangster films, Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, and Juice, because you got the juice now, Jason Teasley. Jason ran through a lot of the schedule already. This past week, we reviewed Cocaine Bear, RAR, His Dark Materials.
RAR.
Alexis Hana and the Puntacular Zachary Strobel reviewed Animaniacs Season 3. This weekend, we've got Everyone Loves a Bad Guy, Frankenstein, and then Metal Hammer of Doom, Iced Earth, Plagues of Babylon. These are re-airs from back in the day on the Blog Talk Radio Network. We've got a re-airing of Archie vs. Predator on Monday. And then, as Jason said, Creed 3. And then we're closing up the week before I go on vacation with the history of boxing, Aaron Pryor versus Alexis Arguello. All right. That's all for me. Thanks. I'm driving. I want to thank Jason Teasley for hanging out with me this month. You'll see a lot more of him soon. Be well, be safe, and behave.